Hey everyone, so this is our first lecture for LIS 461, Data and Algorithms, Ethics and Policy. Hopefully by this point you've gotten a chance to look at the introductory videos from myself and the two TAs that'll be assisting me with this course, as well as looking over the syllabus and the readings by Dennett and Schaefer-Landau. If you haven't looked over those readings, it's not the end of the world. You can listen to this lecture and then read them over afterwards. We're just starting out, but going forward, the hope and the expectation is that you'll have finished the readings that are assigned prior to the lectures that will be posted. So the assumption will be that you'll have read over those things, left annotations in perusal, which I'll talk about in a second as we go over the syllabus and how the course is going to be structured, prior to watching the lecture videos. So here's an outline of what I'm going to try to give an overview of today. I'm going to talk about the syllabus. I'm going to talk about the different ways that you'll be graded depending on whether or not you're signed up for this class for 3 credits or 4 credits, the different assignments and the lengths and the expectations of them. I want to talk a little bit about discussion norms. The short reading, it's just a page by Dennett that I had you look over, talks about ways of engaging with the ideas of others in a fruitful and productive way. I realize this is an asynchronous class, and so we're not going to be talking to each other face to face. We're going to be talking to each other through recorded videos or through discussion board posts or through the annotations on the readings, the assigned readings that I'll talk about briefly. But even so, there are better and worse ways that you can conduct yourself in responding to the ideas of others, taking the arguments and ideas of other people charitably, construing them in the strongest possible way, and then respectfully proposing objections or criticisms that help not only yourself understand the other person's view better, but have the other person reflect more and understand their own views better than they did previously. So I'm going to spend a little time talking about that and how that works. I'm going to talk about the course overview as a whole, the main portions of the course that we're going to be talking about, and at what point you'll have deadlines coming up in terms of assignments and class presentations. And then I want to spend some time talking about some core distinctions that are going to frame the entire semester. This is a class that involves discussions involving ethics and policy, as well as questions involving data science and questions involving privacy and the law. So getting some core distinctions on the table to make sure that we're not talking past one another when we have these kinds of discussions is really important. And then at the very end of today, I want to talk about some general tips for doing well in the course, some strategies that you can employ, and also talk about an extra credit opportunity right at the beginning of the semester that I hope you take advantage of so you can start the course off right. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the syllabus for the class. If you aren't already aware, this class can be taken as a 3-credit course or a 4-credit course. The 4-credit course satisfies the COM-B requirement for UW-Madison. Even though some of the students are taking it for 3 credits and some are taking it for 4 credits, I'm going to try to have the two groups interact a decent amount throughout the semester. You'll see when I talk about the different assignments for the different credit courses, how they'll interact with each other in terms of giving peer feedback and comments on each other's presentations. Even so, there's one common area that both students that take the class for 3 credits and those that take it for 4 credits will have in common, and that's the assigned reading. The percentages are different. For those taking the class for 3 credits, it'll be 25% of their grade, and for those taking it for 4 credits, it'll be 20% of their grade. The interface, though, will be exactly the same. If you're not familiar with perusal, that's fine. I encourage you to familiarize yourself with the perusal interface. All of the assigned readings, and including the syllabus, will be posted on perusal. The way perusal works is it requires you to do the reading. It times the extent to which you're interacting with the assigned reading. The comments that you leave can be seen by others. Perusal will divide the class into sections of 15, and you'll be able to see the questions and comments of other people that are in your group. You'll then be able to leave comments of your own and reply to the comments of others. Perusal then has a particular algorithm, which you can familiarize yourself with, which will grade your feedback and your engagement with the text. Please familiarize yourself with perusal. please do the perusal annotations before they're due. The specifications for that are on the schedule page. The interaction that you have with your other students in this class is absolutely essential. And a large percentage of it will come from interacting in the actual readings, in the assigned readings. Okay, so as I mentioned, the assigned reading will be the same whether or not you are taking the class for 4 credits or 3 credits. But here are some more details about specific requirements and expectations if you're taking the course for 4 credits. These are outlined in more detail on the syllabus, and for a lot of them, I'll provide more information about them as the deadlines to submit them get closer. Also, something I'll mention is that several of these will be scaffolded in a particular way. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that there will be particular small portions of the assignment that are due at earlier deadlines, which then culminate in submitting the full project at a later time. This gives you an opportunity to develop your idea over time and also to get feedback on it as it's being developed. So if you take the class for 4 credits, one of the main assignments are memos. Memos are worth 10% of your overall grade, 2 percentage points each. There will be 5 of them. They involve about 1 page of writing, and you'll be responding to a prompt that I provide to you. You can then get feedback on the response that you write from the TAs, and then you can revise and resubmit on the basis of that feedback. Another assignment for those taking it for 4 credits are SADIES. SADIES stands for Stories About Algorithms, Data, Information, and Ethics. There will be 2 of these at various points in the semester, each worth about 10%, so you have 20% total. These have both a written component and a presentation component. So for each of these SADIES, you will write 2 to 3 pages, but then you'll also create a brief video that you'll post and share with the class, describing the particular story that you selected. You'll then get feedback from your other peers, and on the basis of this feedback, you'll revise the piece of writing prior to submitting it for a grade. There will be a paper 1, which is 5 to 6 pages and worth 20%, and then the final paper, paper 2, will be due at the end of the semester, and there'll be a final presentation. So the final paper 2 is 7 to 9 pages and also comes with a video presentation. Just like the 2 SADIES, the paper 2 will also have a peer feedback component, where the students that are taking the course for 3 credits will give you constructive feedback on your video presentation, which then you can use as material to revise your piece of writing before submitting it for a final grade. Okay, now on to the students who will be taking the course for 3 credits. For the students taking the course for 3 credits, there will be a shorter paper in response to a particular prompt that I give you. That'll be 3 to 4 pages. That'll consist of 25% of your overall grade. Then there'll be the peer feedback component. As I mentioned, this is you responding and giving constructive feedback and criticism to the presentations of the students who are taking the course for 4 credits. So you'll give peer feedback in a forum in response to the presentations of the SADIES of the 4 credit students, as well as in response to their final projects at the very end of the semester. Then you yourself, as a 3 credit student, have a final project of your own, where you focus in on a particular case study, you conduct research, and you write a 5 to 6 page paper. This assignment will also be scaffolded like some of the others, where there'll be earlier deadlines where you develop an annotated bibliography, particular sources, you select a topic, you consider different arguments, and those will be due at various points to force you to develop the project over an extended period of time. Then at the end of the semester, you'll turn in a document that's 5 to 6 pages that is the culmination of all of that research and thinking. The final thing I want to say about the syllabus and the overall expectations and assignments for the course concerns plagiarism. Plagiarism is one of the worst things you can do as an academic, if you aren't already aware of that. It's extremely egregious, and in many ways, my hands are tied if you're caught plagiarizing. What we're going to do is we're going to take your submitted work and run it through a website that we have linked into Canvas called Turnitin. Turnitin then searches amongst a set of previously submitted works through Turnitin, as well as text on the internet, and tries to identify similarities. If you're caught plagiarizing, I'll be forced to fail you for the assignment, and depending on how egregious it is, failure for the course. Please do not plagiarize. One other thing I want to say, though, is that plagiarism is bad not simply because it's harmful for you in a self-interested sense, that it could result in you failing this course. I want you to take this class as an opportunity to develop your thinking and writing skills about these really interesting, cutting-edge issues involving ethics and data. Uh, if you take this class seriously and you engage in the readings and you engage with the ideas of your peers, I think you'll come out the other end with a newfound understanding and appreciation of this material. So even if you plagiarize and somehow you get passed and somehow you get a good grade, there's a sense in which you're robbing yourself of this opportunity. So please take this class seriously and please turn in your own work. Please actually reflect on these things. Please actually engage with the ideas of the authors that we're reading and think through what you actually think concerning these different issues. Okay, now that we have the syllabus laid out and the various expectations and the importance of not plagiarizing, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the importance of certain norms of discussion. Even though we won't be face-to-face, because this is an asynchronous class, we'll still be interacting with each other through videos, through annotations on the assigned reading, emails back and forth with the TA and myself and so on. Peer feedback, the peer review that the students who are taking the class for 3 credits will be giving to the students who are taking it for 4 credits in the videos that they post. When you engage with your peers in this class, as well as the instructors, I want you to try to be as respectful as possible. In terms of having an effective discussion, there are certain ways of going about it. Making sure that you understand the position of the person that you're replying to, re-expressing what they've said in your own words and having them acknowledge that they've understood it, and most importantly, give reasons for your position. If you're leveling a criticism of someone or some idea, be it someone in the class or one of the authors that we read, don't just simply say that you agree or that you disagree. Give reasons for why you hold the views that you do. Reasons that the person you're engaging with could respond to and engage with and evaluate whether or not they're good reasons or bad ones. There's a short little reading by Dennett that I posted about Rappaport's rules, and he talks about the importance and the significance of taking the ideas of other people seriously and charitably, trying to understand them in the strongest possible sense, and then engaging with them so that you understand you're both on the same page with what you're talking about, what the actual subject matter is. Relatedly, I want you to try to avoid committing what are called fallacies. Fallacies are common mistakes in reasoning. If you've taken a class in logic, you're probably familiar with that word. If you're not, that's fine. The main types of fallacies I want you to try to avoid are ones that involve attacking the person who's putting forward a line of reasoning rather than the line of reasoning itself. Whenever you engage with a post of a peer or some of the text from the authors that we'll be reading, try to think through the arguments that they're giving. What lines of reasoning are they presenting? And do you think those lines of reasoning are good or bad? Try to avoid attacking aspects of the person's character or aspects of the person's circumstance. There are lots of different fallacies that are out there. If you go on Wikipedia, you can find a big list of common mistakes in reasoning that people commit. If you commit one of these fallacies, myself or one of the TAs might mention it to you, as well as your peers. So try to avoid committing fallacies, and if you spot the fallacies in the reasoning of someone else, be it an author or one of your peers, try to respectfully and charitably identify it and explain to them why you think it's a fallacy, why you think it's a poor line of reasoning. Okay, now I want to shift a little bit and just give you a general summary or overview of the structure of the course. At the start of the course, we'll spend some time talking about a field called ethical theory. There are lots of different ways that people have thought about the nature of ethics and ethical obligations and ethical duties, ethical requirements, and we're going to look at a few of those different ways. There are various principles that people have put forward that they think capture the essence of what it means to reason correctly about ethics. And there are people who disagree about them. They put forward arguments and criticisms. The general structure of the course is that we'll start off looking at different kinds of ethical theories. We'll start off looking at the possibility that ethics is just relative to, say, cultures or individuals or time periods. Maybe there is no objective fact about what's right and what's wrong, independently of individuals' approval or disapproval, right, of particular, say, courses of action. We'll also talk about other ethical views, views that say that what makes something right or wrong are determined on the basis of the consequences of the actions or the decisions that are made. Or maybe another ethical view, there are facts about ethics that are independent of the consequences of the actions, ones that have to do with our motivations or considerations of rights and respect and autonomy. If some of those terms aren't ones that you're familiar with, that's fine. We'll spend some time talking about them and going through examples. But the first part of the course will be making sure that all of us understand different competing accounts of what's right and what's wrong, and how we should guide our decisions. Then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some core concepts involving data science. These will set the stage for us understanding the contemporary relevance of considerations about data, why they're so significant, and why they're so pressing that we reason well about them. And then the majority of the course is going to be applying our understanding of these core data science concepts, as well as these ethical theories, to particular areas of interest. We're going to look at how ethical issues arise when talking about housing. We're going to talk about how ethical issues arise when talking about the legal system, when talking about medicine. Then you are also, as students, going to select particular topics and case studies to do research about. Using the tools and the concepts that you have in your understanding of ethical theory and these data science concepts, you'll be able to compose really well-organized, well-reasoned pieces of writing, as well as video presentations about particular pressing issues and areas involving data ethics in our contemporary world. Okay, so now I just want to mention a few core distinctions, important conceptual distinctions and contrasts that will be with us for the whole summer. These are distinctions that are important for you to recognize, and whenever you catch yourself or someone else conflating these distinctions or not being clear the way in which they're asserting a particular claim, I want you to have these distinctions in mind. On the slide here, I have in red the distinction between is and ought. There are lots of different kinds of claims that people can make. One class of claims are claims about what is the case. We can consult scientists, we can consult lots of different experts in different areas that maybe have really good reasons that they could give us to think that the world is a particular way, that our minds are a particular way, that some computer program operates in a particular way. These are all claims about what is the case. There's a distinct kind of claim, though, that you might call ought claims. Ought is just a fancy old-fashioned way of saying should. The specific kind of ought claims that we're going to be focusing on often involve ethical claims. So in addition to trying to figure out the way the world is, we could also ask questions about the way the world ought to be. We could ask not only how people in fact behave, but how people ought to behave, and what makes it the case that they ought to behave a particular way rather than another. There are different ways that the word ought can be used, which I'll talk about in a second, but the fundamental distinction that I want to emphasize right now is that there's one usage of it that is ethical. Questions about, ethically speaking, how we ought to live, what decisions we ought to make, what policies we ought to enact, what programs we ought to employ for particular purposes, and the reasons why we ought to do so. Another core distinction or contrast that I want you to have in mind is the distinction between something being legal and something being moral. These two concepts are distinct from each other. Oftentimes they overlap with one another in their application. So a particular kind of action might be both illegal and immoral, but it's also possible that an action could be immoral but not illegal. So, for example, imagine you engage in premeditated murder. That is an instance in which your action is both illegal, you could get locked up if you get caught from having done so, and the vast majority of ethical views we're going to talk about will also say that it's immoral, that you ought not do it for ethical reasons. There are also things, though, that we think are immoral, but not illegal. So, for example, imagine you cheat on your spouse or your significant other, and you catch them, and you call the cops, and you say, arrest them, throw them in prison. The cops aren't going to do anything, because even though that person may have violated your trust and maybe have betrayed you in a certain sense, and so by various ethical standards may have done something immoral, they haven't broken any laws in the illegal sense. What makes it the case that something's illegal is that it's on the books. Its laws have been passed that make it the case that those particular actions or behaviors violate the law. If you look at the past, though, the law changes over time. There were certain types of actions, for example, in the past in America, uh, like owning someone legally as property because of slavery, that at the time was legal, but most ethical theories are going to say is immoral. So the crucial point here is that these are distinct concepts. They often come apart. And when someone is making a claim about the way things ought to be, please try to be clear about whether or not you're saying that in a legal sense or if you're saying that in a moral sense. For the purposes of our class, we're primarily going to be focusing on moral considerations, whether or not particular uses of data collection and application are morally concerning. There are, of course, related questions about their legal application and their legal concerns. But we should be clear when we're having this discussion about which of those concepts we're employing. Another important contrast I want to emphasize is the contrast between ethics, questions about right and wrong, which one of the other readings that we had for today emphasized, and then questions about what's called epistemology. Epistemology is a branch of philosophy, just like ethics is a branch of philosophy, that specifically is concerned with knowledge and what we can know. Sometimes people will use the term ought related to epistemology. They'll say things like, you ought to believe what's true, or you ought to accept that this is a particular sound line of reasoning. That's a distinct kind of usage of the word ought than the usage that is used in ethics, where someone says, you ought not lie, or you ought not murder, or you ought to be trustworthy, or something like that. When someone is making a claim that involves questions of how you ought to act or ought to form your beliefs, I want you to try to reflect and ask yourself, are they making a claim about the ethical ought, or are they making a claim about the epistemic ought or the epistemology ought? These are two distinct kinds of claims, and sometimes they might pull apart from each other. So these are important contrasts that I want you to have in mind in evaluating your own claims and clarifying them, as well as how to evaluate and understand the claims of others. Okay, the final thing I want to mention are just some general tips or suggestions for how to do well in this course, as well as mention an extra credit opportunity that you have right now. The primary tip I want to suggest is not to wait till the last minute. The deadlines for when the annotations for the assigned readings are due are specified. The deadlines for the assignments will be specified well in advance, at least a week or two. So please, don't wait until the last minute for when the deadlines are coming up. Also, I want to strongly encourage you to ask questions. Ask questions of your peers if you're confused about the reading and your annotations for the assigned readings. If you're really puzzled about some aspect of the course, please feel free to reach out to the TAs or myself. The more questions you ask, the more you'll get out of this course. I've also created a discussion board on the Canvas site for any generalized questions you might have about concepts that we use or administrative questions about how the class is going to be carried out. If you have a question about any of those things, it's very likely that someone else in the class also has questions. So it'll benefit you and benefit everybody else if you ask those questions and give me and the TAs an opportunity to reply to them. The extra credit opportunity I want to mention is that there's another discussion board that I've created on Canvas where you can write a brief summary of yourself, your academic interests, and why you're taking this course. And I will give you 1 percentage point on your final grade in addition to the normal specified requirements for the class and the grading scheme. I'll leave that open until the end of the first week. So this is an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to the class, explain why you're taking it, and explain if you have any particular background in this area or what you're looking forward to. So with that, I'll stop the first lecture. I look forward to working with you this summer, and I look forward to reflecting on these really interesting questions involving ethics, the decisions we ought to make, why we ought to make them, and how they engage with issues involving emerging technologies that are increasingly controlling our lives going forward.